originally known as Imposter Syndrome. Now we've kind of worked on kind of how we describe it because it's not really like a syndrome. And the wording kind of sounds like there's a problem. It's not that there's a problem. It's just an experience that feelings and thoughts that we have. And it's something that almost everybody has experienced at some point. And so we've kind of changed that wording to more imposter phenomena or imposter feelings. So through the presentation, you'll probably be hearing me say that. That's where that's from. So today we're going to kind of been talking about, our title is Silence the Inner Critic, how to overcome imposter phenomena. And this is a joint collaboration between us here at UCF Career Services and UCF Counseling and Psychological Services, CAPS. And I will also be joined by Ian Ramos Lopez. He is one of the mental health counselors at CAPS. And so he will join in a bit. Ian, did you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. I'm one of the counselors on staff at CAPS. My name is Ian Ramos Lopez. Big part of this presentation will also include information on how to get connected with care. If you watch this and we're like, I might need more specialized help, we'll talk about that closer to the end. So thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thanks. Yeah, there's also a poll if you like to use to, kind of just asking some questions about what your familiarity or experience with imposter feelings are. And yeah, so feel free, as I said, use the chat, and we will also be answering questions at the end as well. So as I'm introducing myself, my name is Alexandra Minnick. I'm the assistant director here at UCF Career Services. I'm work in the side what we call career planning, which is where we work with students. So we help with resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn, job search, career assessment exploration, and mock practice interviewing. So I always tell everybody the easiest way to remember, if there's anything you need help with career, come and see us at Career Services. And I'm also a licensed clinical social worker as well. And as I said, I always say I have the opportunity of now working here, and I also studied here. I'm also an alum. I got both my psychology and sociology degrees here, as well as my master's in social work. And just a little bit about myself as hobbies: I love theme parks. Universal, Disney are my self-care. And also working on Duolingo. English, I'm now working on Spanish and German. So trying to introduce, work on that. And yeah, just always love having fun and grabbing coffee around campus, always trying all the new places around. So it's just a little bit about myself. If you have a second, you can feel free to scan the QR code to check in. If it's not working, we do have the chat because being the Zoom, we can pull the emails as well. So if for any reason the QR code doesn't work, we also can do that. So I'll give everybody a second to scan the QR code just to make sure you get checked in. And then after this, you will get a attendance email 24 to 48 hours sent. So if you do need confirmation that you attended this workshop, that will be sent. So this is how we know that we can send it, make sure that you checked in, you were here, and you'll get the email. So yes. Okay. If anybody has any questions, let me know.
I do. What's your other hobby besides theme parks, reading, movies, coffee, and Duolingo?
Well, I mean, I'm always, I'm a big student. I'm actually pursuing my PhD. So that actually is a kind of like a hobby on its own. So I'm right now in the process of writing my dissertation. So that's been kind of a hobby, doing a lot of that right now. But thanks. Yeah, it's a good question. So if anybody have questions about PhDs, definitely come and talk. And also one of our other assistant directors is doing that too, her PhD as well. So, okay, well, so I'll go ahead and kind of jump in. So what we're just going to talk about, as I mentioned before, is just understanding what imposter phenomena or imposter feelings are, tips for kind of addressing it, and then going to be covering a little bit more about how you can use different types of strategies to help you with that, about how really trying to use reframing, self-compassion, and also taking a growth mindset and how that can really help you with imposter feelings. So great. So I always like to ask in the chat just so we kind of know who the audience is. So if you'd like, you can use just type in what year you are, or you can use the emoji if you want to do that. If you are a first year, sophomore, junior, transfer, senior, or a recent graduate or alumni, just so we know who's in the audience. Junior, okay, awesome. Stefan's a junior, awesome. Love that. Okay, oh, we got graduate alumni, awesome. Very cool. Senior, okay, awesome. So junior, senior, graduate. Okay, cool. Well, that's a good, I like that. It's a good mixture there. So yeah, it's great. So kind of what does this whole term mean, imposter, right? You kind of hear this term, you know, as we mentioned, imposter phenomena, imposter feelings. But I always say you can't really understand something until you kind of think about how have you heard it, right? How have you seen it, or what have you? And a lot of times I feel like we've all heard this in different ways, right? From media, from others, we've said it ourselves. It's kind of these messages that we start to hear, and these are the thoughts and kind of leads to these feelings. So some examples that you might have heard, especially when you're looking at it from the career side, is maybe I do not have enough experience on my resume. I do not like talking about myself, therefore I never do well with interviews. The recruiter interview doesn't like me. You know, maybe I don't have enough skills to be called for an interview or successful in this job or career. Sometimes even I can't figure out where to begin. And one of the things you might hear a lot is like, if they only knew that I'm a total fraud and everyone's about to find out, right? Like that worry that you're going to be, you know, feel found out, like, oh, I'm not really this good at what I do, that kind of fear. And so I always like to say, you know, have you ever experienced that? You know, does this sound familiar as thoughts? So when we kind of dig a little deeper into this is to really look at it as these kind of thoughts, these feelings that we have. It's a lot of times this persistent self-doubt, which is you know, kind of coupled with this worry about, you know, being seen as, like, as I said, like a fraud or this imposter, right? Despite, even though you have all the skills, the experience, all these achievements, you're still feeling that way. And you sometimes you may think that people may have this exaggerated view of your abilities, the continuous, maybe there's a tendency that you may have to like really downplay your achievements. And what we found is that more than 80% of people have experienced imposter feelings or imposter phenomena at some point in their lives. So as I said, it is almost everybody has experienced it at some point. And I think what it really becomes is that when these feelings really start to kind of, you know, really start to linger, it starts to lead to a lot of like stress, anxiety. It may even lead to this cycle of like overworking yourself, where you're starting to think, well, I need to do more. And, you know, you're feeling, I got to do this, I got to do this. And then it can also lead to that low self confidence, right? Like, I'm not, you know, kind of similar to what we saw with a lot of those thoughts. And then it might lead to also maybe questioning your ability to be successful. You know, maybe just living in this constant worry of maybe being like discovered, feeling underserved of recognition or respect that you receive. Like if somebody is like, this is great work, you're kind of like, well, are they really saying that? You know, worrying over minor mistakes or working twice as hard to prove themselves. It's kind of can go both of those ways, and convincing that they do not belong in the roles that they hold, even though again you have the experience, you have the skills, you have this success. So it's a lot that's going on there. And so what you kind of see here is there's been kind of these, again, I don't like saying types, but there's been kind of ways that imposter phenomena or feelings can be kind of showing in different kind of ways. So I always tell everybody it's not the, maybe it's not always feeling like this fraud or this imposter, but it could be in different ways. Sometimes we do see imposter when maybe there's a focus on this perfectionist side. And it's might be like always looking for things to go perfectly. If there's something, a mistake or maybe a slight error, this can maybe lead to feelings of like, okay, I'm, self-doubt and maybe that guilt. Then there's the side of maybe doing it more on the superhero side, which is thinking of, okay, how many different roles can I play? And if they can't play them all perfectly, then they might feel like, well, then everybody will find out I'm a fraud. There's also the side of maybe trying to be that expert, right? Seeking to know everything in the face of even maybe the slightest, maybe a lack of knowledge about something. They may feel like this worry about, okay, well, I'm not, maybe I'm not good enough for this. The natural genius, again, kind of looking at it from, maybe trying to expect to meet high goals like really quickly. And then sometimes when things get difficult, it may feel like, again, maybe leading to that guilt. And there's also the soloist, which is the need to do things alone without help from anyone, because sometimes they may interpret needing help as a sign of maybe this, as a sign of failure or maybe, weakness. And those are kind of this what you start to see. So I will always say that when you think of the term imposter, it's not just only this one side of it. It can look in different ways. It can, be shown in, all these different kind of contexts. So, yep. Oh, perfect. Yeah. No, thanks, Stefan. Yeah, Stefan mentioned that I do belong on the superhero side. Seems like my ways of getting there are bad. I see that I have to help people even though I do not want to sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely good to like know that and recognize that. So yeah, glad to hear that. And as I said, this can look in different ways. So when you kind of get down to the whole imposter, now kind of as we're digging through it, you get to this idea that there's this paradox, which is, you might think of it this way. Maybe this is an example. Others believe in you, but then you don't believe in yourself. And then the result of that is yet you believe yourself instead of them. So it's kind of like these, as I said, you're kind of getting all these different, it's this kind of complex, of feelings and thoughts and also related to experiences, right, in different contexts that leads to this kind of this paradox. So I think that's always a good way to look at it. And to kind of start with talking about some tips, we're going to kind of talk a little bit about 7 strategies that I think will be very helpful for this to help you with, as you are navigating your career, your academic journey here at UCF, how you can, figure out ways when you do feel that imposter feeling or that, this self-doubt or this worry or fear or feeling like a fraud, you know what to do. So the first tip is, as I said, I like to highlight Sherlock Holmes, so Benedict Cumberbatch. So tip 1, channel your inner Sherlock Holmes and gather accomplishment evidence. So just think of it as like you would Sherlock Holmes. He's investigating crimes, right? Finding all the evidence. That's really what you want to look at imposter feelings with, is start to create a dedicated space and time to compile these tangible proofs of your achievements. And again, this can look at certificates, awards, projects, extracurricular activities, courses, community service, internship, job, grades, positive feedback, anything that you can think of where you can showcase all these great examples. That can really help you see that. I've even told some people, maybe just look at your resume and your LinkedIn, and you'll get a lot of seeing what you've accomplished. And some things that can also be really helpful is maybe keep a journal where you jot down, times. This is really helpful too. as you are in the process of maybe reflecting, is jotting down when you've done a project success, completed it, or a milestone reached, or a compliment received. It's good sometimes to do that journaling. You could also do screenshots or photos of your work. I think that's always great. If you accomplished something, you were like, this is awesome. You took a picture, then you always can look back on that, right? That's on your phone, that's on your computer. This can also include, just as a way for you to remind you of your progress and what you've done. And you can also look at it from maybe you requested reference letters, or maybe a letter of recommendation from a colleague or a mentor or supervisor. Think of that, or regularly revisit. I think it's really important to do that, to remind yourself of it. You just don't want to do it one time. You want to consistently do it and review. And then I think what that does, it'll help slowly silence the doubts that imposter syndrome or imposter phenomena may fuel. So I always tell everybody, sometimes maybe do a schedule, maybe do it every Sunday from 10 to 10:30 a.m. You'll, maybe review, how was your week, and review what you accomplished. Tip 2, so implement a growth mindset. So this is a really important thing that I think is super helpful. And this can be used in all other things as well, in like all other experiences, as you're going here at UCF. But I think a growth mindset really does help you with, if you are feeling those imposter feelings, because it's going to help you discover more about yourself. It helps you try new things, be open, and supports this continuous learning from experiences. And I think that is really the idea to look at imposter, as you're feeling that. So I use an example because this is actually from a recent interview. Taylor Swift had recently talked about how she's experienced imposter phenomena as an artist, even when she's been, as successful, right? She's been experiencing this. She talked about it, how she's been experiencing it. And she mentioned one that I thought was I think really helps stand out, is she said once she was starting to direct music videos, she didn't really want to do it because she said like she felt like this was not her background. She's a singer, she's a songwriter, and that she was doing something where she just said, no, you don't do that, because there's people out there that are more qualified or that might have went to school. But then what she said is that, but by actually by actually doing this experience and getting outside of her comfort zone and being on set, it actually provided her a very fulfilling learning experience. And now she has a passion, and she said her next goal now is to actually, from music videos, to direct a feature film. So I think of it as that's a way that she also included having a growth mindset to help her with her experience with imposter feelings. And I think always think of a growth mindset as change your words, change your mindset. Because I think a lot of times with imposter, it gets into this fixed kind of mindset where you might think like, I made a mistake, I'm not good at this, I can't do this. But I think what the growth mindset does is it just kind of gets you out of this very, all or nothing thinking, and changes it to more of a growth, like looking at it as, I'm still learning, I'm going to keep trying. This may take some time and effort, and maybe think of it as mistakes help me learn. So this is another way that can really help you with when you are experiencing these imposter feelings, is take it from, that's a fixed mindset. How can I change this to a growth mindset? And maybe changing the words can make that difference. And then tip 3, I think the biggest thing is really to, define success clearly and break it down. I think the biggest thing is that what happens a lot of times is that we often experience this all or nothing policy with success. Like we think it's this and it's that, and that's it. And setbacks and challenges are in really integral parts of growth, and they don't invalidate your overall progress. It's completely normal to have setbacks and challenges. But I think what is the biggest thing is to look at, how do you define success, but then break it down into smaller achievable goals or more manageable components. by establishing maybe these more goals that are specific for a role or a task, if you want to do that as well. A lot of times this kind of goes along with maybe things that you've learned in class where they talked a lot about SMART goals, how you can take a goal, like how it's important to have this. This is my overall arching goal or my long-term goal, but then what can I do? What are my objectives and steps to achieve that? So maybe looking at that way, that's a way that you can help yourself build that confidence in your career, your academics, and helping you in that process reduce those imposter feelings. And also just to tell yourself it's okay to face, acknowledge that it's okay to face, occasional setbacks, and that and celebrate the progress, especially this part. Celebrate the progress and recognize all the small steps that you're achieving to your goals or your tasks. It doesn't have to be these big giant leaps. Celebrate the small steps because you're still achieving that goal. And I think that really does help a lot, is really kind of helping yourself look at how you define success, but then breaking it down and maybe approaching it more from a goal side. And then tip 4 is really about replacing or reframing our negative thoughts, because a lot of times imposter phenomena or imposter feelings are very negative. And so what we want to try it is to change it from the negative to the positive. And we call this reframing. And it's really things like, as we kind of mentioned before, maybe it's a thought like, I'm not good at anything. And then a way that you could do this is reflect on 3 things that you're good at. If it's maybe a thought like, I need to work harder than everyone, maybe look at your strengths. Maybe think about, okay, what strengths do I bring? Remember that you were, selected for a position or a program. So think of it as, I'm here at UCF. I'm in this program, or maybe you got a job or an internship. You got this based off of your experience, right? Off of your skills, off of your, everything that you have accomplished. So you just didn't get it. You actually, that you had been selected, you achieved it. Example could also be, I need to work harder than everyone to achieve the same success. Maybe reframe or replace it into saying, well, I have a good work ethic. So maybe not, instead of saying I need to work harder than than everyone, think of it as, what do you bring, looking at more of the strength. I have this good work ethic. So I think those are just ideas where you can kind of replace or reframe those negative thoughts. And I think it's really about the language that we use, because as I mentioned before, a lot of times the words that we use really do play a big part. And I think reframing really helps us be aware of the language. It also helps us be aware of, are we showing empathy to ourselves? Because a lot of times, as you can tell, some of the thoughts, the ways that they are said, these imposter thoughts, feelings, is very, not really empathetic. And it can be really good to think about reframing as a way to showcase that empathy. It can also be a way to focus more on the facts. And also looking at the context, and what behave in the behaviors that you have, right? So it's not just about just changing the thoughts, it's doing different things to help you reframe and replace those thoughts, but doing it as a way to help you change it when you do have that thought in the moment. And so a lot of other ways that you can say it is, it can just be from, maybe the negative thought is, it's just too hard. And you could reframe it by saying, this will get easier with time and practice. Maybe instead of saying, I give up, you could try saying, I'll try to do this in a different way or an alternative way. Instead of saying, maybe they're better at this than I am, maybe change it to, how can I learn from them? Instead of saying, I'm not good at this, how can I learn to be better at this? Or how can I learn to develop the skill, right? Instead of saying, I can't do this, you can always say, I'm learning and I will keep trying and continuing to practice and build that skill. I'm scared to make a mistake. And I think this is a big one. Mistakes are proof that I'm trying. So really changing that can really help a lot. And, there's always other ways that you can always change thoughts. And I think one of the biggest ones that I've heard a lot is I just got lucky. And that's one of the imposter feelings that I've heard a lot of. But it's about maybe a way to change that one is I worked hard and am deserving of my accomplishment. So just think of ways how you can kind of change those thoughts. And I think the best way to do this is to, when you have that negative career thought, identify it, and then you're going to challenge it. Consider thinking about it as, does this thought make sense? And and if it's nope, it doesn't, then you're going to reframe and replace it, right? So if the thought's negative, now go and change it and alter it, and then from there you'll have a new thought. So then that will help you continue on with achieving your tasks, your success, and help you continue to reduce that imposter feeling. And then I think the one of the tips I think is really important is to create what's called a post-mistake compassionate plan. This is basically that, as I said, it's just inevitable that we're all going to make mistakes, and striving to be more, mistake proof is very impossible. And I think it's really good to always have a kind of write out this compassionate plan. It can be very short. It doesn't have to be an essay, anything like that. It's just a way that you would hold yourself, to this is like maybe an example of it would be I'm reaching out to you because I trust you and feel comfortable with you. However, at times I don't trust myself, or I might be really hard on myself. So I came up with a plan of how to compassionately move forward after I make a mistake. In order to hold myself accountable, I agree to practice self-compassion, or I agree to practice self-compassion and reframing, right? However it is that you plan on, you know, addressing this, or what strategies you use, you can always also incorporate it into this post-mistake compassion plan. So and then I think what the biggest thing is to trust the process. It's very easy to listen to the negative voice, that silent critic in our head, but listen to the feedback that you get from others and look back at the past. You can always look back at the past, but continue to move forward. And odds are, I always tell this, your boss isn't being nice when they're giving you an excellent evaluation or recommends you for a promotion. You deserve it. You earned it. Other people tend to be more objective than we are with ourselves. So that's why it's good to listen to other people, because they're more often a little bit more objective. And when multiple people believe in you, I think it's always good to say, okay, I think it's time that I need to believe in myself. And I would say this, remember that you belong. Again, a lot of times when we do feel this imposter feelings, we may feel like we don't belong. And I always say this, as I said kind of earlier, remember you were selected for that interview, that job position, or to that program. The HR or the committee members know what they're doing, and they have selected you. You earned this. You didn't slip through the cracks. And I think the biggest thing, as I said, is, as we talked about earlier, is one thing is not, sometimes with imposter feelings, we feel like we can't ask for help. But I really think that you should always know that you want to ask for help. It really does, make a difference, because to help you reduce your stress, it's really good to seek out, words of wisdom, advice from people who've been through that process, who have experienced imposter feeling. As I said, every person has experienced it at some point. And just knowing that others may have been in the same position can help you ease your worries and help asking that for that help. How can I help myself, with reducing these feelings that I have? And I think when you share and talk about these feelings, it really does help you work through the feelings while lowering your stress in the process. And this kind of goes along with what we'll talk about a little later, but this is really the idea of, feel free to reach out to CAPS if you are feeling like you need more mental health counseling, or would like to talk to somebody a little bit more about this in depth. And then career services, you can also talk for us for help if you're trying to figure out, how can I develop a job search plan? How can I build my confidence in my interviewing skills? Or how can I maybe identify my strengths and prepare for resume and cover letter? So basically, you have a lot of great resources here on campus, and it's good to ask, feel free, we are here to help you, and just asking for help can really help. And I think kind of in conclusion, or kind of hopefully kind of that feedback you get from this, is really that I think of imposter feelings as it's going to be different for everybody. This workshop is really just to give everybody an understanding of what it is or how it may look, because it can differ. Every person that experiences imposter feelings is different. It's going to be a different experience. But you kind of just want to have that understanding, because sometimes you may think, oh, well, I have said that to myself, and this might be really good for you to just be aware of that. And so what I hope this comes is just giving you a little bit more information, education, helping you identify those thoughts and figuring out what strategies would be helpful for that and helping you reduce those imposter feelings. And I think of it as overcoming imposter feelings is both a personal and it's transformative. And just by embracing this, I think you really start to boost your self validation. You build your self confidence, you recognize your self worth, and then that can help you navigate the complexities of self doubt. But then you have this newfound resilience. And that's really what I hope you got out of today. And I always tell everybody, there may be something there's always if there's a setback, a challenge, a mistake you made, you can always, you have the power to rewrite it, right? You always have that time to learn from it and grow and develop. And just embracing the truth of your accomplishments, right? Seeing them for what they are, right? I did this. Good job. Congrats. Be proud of yourself. And this constant struggle against like imposter feelings just kind of can be replaced when we focus a little bit more on this journey of growth, right? Learning, developing, and just accepting ourselves and practicing that compassion. I always say, if you're like, well, how do I address these feelings? What would you say to a friend that was experiencing this? If what you would say to that friend, say to yourself. And then just think of it as that, as I said, we are here to help assist you and you got this. And I'll let Ian take over for the next part.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'll just get through some of these additional resources in just a moment. There's Handshake. Some career services support. All right. Oh, I forgot to update. We're no longer in summer. We're in fall. Look at that. Welcome to Self-Compassion and How to Fight Back Against Imposter Syndrome. It's meant as a complement to that fantastic resource that we just got. And we're just going to move on forward. My hobbies, frankly, we don't even have time. We got to get moving. All right. So we're going to be talking about self-compassion today, as well as some of the key components of what that means and what it looks like. We're also going to be reviewing some tools to assist in self-compassion work. These are generally usable skills that you can take and engage with as a way of like distress tolerance and to help calm yourself down. So I'll go over those. But since we're talking self-compassion, in essence, based on the self-compassion workbook, Kristen Neff, we're looking at relating to ourselves kindly, embracing ourselves as we are, flaws and all, right? We can see why this would be a good complement to discussing imposter phenomena, because a lot of that is essentially not doing that, right? We're pushing against ourselves. We're not able to view ourselves as effective and capable, and self-compassion skills help us to move in that direction. In terms of our three key components, we're looking at self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. We'll be kind of going over each individually. So self-kindness is treating ourselves like we would a good friend. You'll see some common threads with what was spoken about before and what we're talking about now. We're trying to be supportive and encouraging to ourselves to protect ourselves from further harm. And we're trying to offer ourselves the same warmth and unconditional acceptance that we would offer to others that we care about. So rather than treating ourselves as if we have failed or like we didn't earn our place or we don't feel like adequate to be in the space that we're in, we're moving to show understanding, right? We're trying to be kinder to ourselves in a way that we often struggle with. We do this by recognizing oftentimes how we're our own biggest critics and have to work to kind of engage with that capacity, right? For each time that we're engaging in criticism towards ourselves, can we try to engage in a little bit of kindness too, right? Does it always have to be that intensely negative view, right? Self-kindness kind of plays into this space. So we're allowed to be kind to ourselves, that being a negative trait, right? And this doesn't mean we ignore flaws, we just also take them into account. Next component is going to be common humanity, right? We're all human beings as far as I know, and all of us are flawed works in progress. We're moving in a direction, sometimes in better directions than others. But pain is also part of the human experience, and we can connect and not feel isolated in that suffering, right? In talking about kind of self-kindness, comparison is often a very major factor in that imposter phenomena, right? I'm seeing everyone else in my class doing fine, and I'm the one struggling, right? Compared to everyone else, I don't deserve to be here is a very common thought that people experience, because more often than not, other people experiencing a similar thought are terrified of being perceived the same way, so they won't bring it up either. So when we engage with common humanity, we remember that other people are struggling maybe just as much and might be just as quiet as we're being about it internally. In that way, we kind of reduce the power of that thought that, like, I don't deserve to be here, by connecting to a community of other human beings, right? Recognizing that other people struggle with concerns like yours can help you feel like we're not in this alone, we're not isolated here. These imposter syndrome thoughts and everything like that can be something that still exists, but can be overcome. Up next is mindfulness. So being aware of how we speak to ourselves, right? Allowing us to face the truth of our experiences, even if they are unpleasant, right? How do we begin to even be like talk kindly to ourselves if we can't acknowledge the pain we're in first? In terms of what we're trying to do, we're trying to take a more wise and objective approach to our pain rather than getting stuck in place, right? We want to look at that pain and recognize, what can I do about it? How did I get here in the first place? Usually the pain that we experience related to imposter phenomena is often rooted in shame and guilt. And those are all hiding emotions. Those are emotions that tell you, hey, get out of there. No one needs to see you like this. This is a bad time. So when we are rushing to hide or not think about this pain, we are not giving it a chance to breathe or understand what it exactly means to us. So mindfulness is about awareness of the present moment with regards to that pain, right? You're asking questions like, where is my fear coming from? What am I struggling with? What do I need right now? Moving to the next one. When you hold all these concepts together, we build compassion and a stable sense of identity through self-acceptance, community, and actions taken. So if we want to go back right there, this is actions taken, right? If you're like, man, that was a lot of good ideas related to self-compassion, but that's, what do I do with that? We take action, we use tools. Our body is connected to our mind, is connected to everything else around us. So if we can engage in ways to essentially calm down our body, we can make better decisions with our thoughts. We can get less stuck in that like swampy space that is those negative failure type thoughts. So when we think about it in these contexts, we're going to look at a lot of different ways in which we engage with our body. The way I want you to consider it is that when we are engaging in self-criticism, we are attacking our sense of self, which triggers our body's defensive systems. And in that moment, we are both attacking and defending from ourselves, and that impacts our body's responses. So when we can do things like touch and self-kindness, we can improve our mood, reduce our stress, and kind of let some of those defenses down so we can answer that threat effectively. We'll move to the next view. So these are just some basic physiological kind of calming exercises. You can do any of these, you can do them all. I'm just putting them up here for consideration, right? All of these are ways to tell your nervous system that you are safe. For some people, this will be more effective than others. It really depends on you and your body and how you choose to connect with it. But oftentimes things like giving yourself a gentle hug or kind of slowly kind of moving hands on your belly or touching yourself in the face to kind of mimic the feeling of positive supportive touch works the same way to tell your body, hey, you're safe. You can do this. You can figure out what's next. Next. Alongside of this is a newer slide that I went ahead and added because this is something that I tend to give to my clients all the time anyway. These are tip skills. These are physiological tools to regulate your nervous system faster than certain other things. Now, with all of these, I obviously express them with like caution and understanding. If, for example, you have issues with your heart rate, I probably wouldn't recommend temperature. because when we apply cold temperature to our bodies, we are essentially like telling our bodies to slow down and calm down based on a nervous system response. But if you're struggling with your heart rate, probably don't want to massively shift your heart rate randomly all the time, right? So we want to be aware of our own bodies and needs when we talk about these. But these are things like exercise, right? There are ways to engage with and express intense emotion. Paced breathing. A lot of people talk about that boxed breathing, so 4x4x4. But oftentimes I will do a slight alteration on it where essentially you take your hand, you start right here, and you breathe in as you move in towards the palm, and you breathe out as you move out towards the fingertip until you finish your whole hand. That gives you something physical to ground yourself to. Again, tells your body that you're safe, allows you to calm down by slowing down. And then we have paired muscle relaxation. This one might require a little bit more of a demo, which we don't necessarily have all the time for, but essentially you are focusing on one muscle group at a time. You are tensing those muscles as much as possible without hurting yourself, and then you are releasing and relaxing. What that does is it helps you figure out where in your body you're holding physical tension, which often comes with stress, which often comes with those imposter thoughts, right? And it allows you to release it one muscle group at a time. All of these, again, regulate your nervous system, which allow you to make better decisions. Moving on to the next one. In terms of mindfulness, right? We talked about it as a big part of what we do with self-compassion. So what we're looking to do is recognition of our space, right? We're trying to become aware of what's around us in the present moment. So this can be, what do you notice with your senses? What distractions are getting in the way of you taking in the environment around you? What can you use to focus on the present? Some people use breathing, some people count, some people repeat phrases or have physical movements that they like to do. What patterns of thinking tend to show up when you're trying to slow things down like this, right? Do you keep thinking about all the things you have to do, all the different stressors you've got going on? If those keep coming up, what do you think that tells you about where you're at? And so on and so forth. So we're engaging with the space around us. There are ways to do this that get a little bit more complex, but this is a place to start, right? With those questions. Moving to the next one. Yep. We talked about this a little bit earlier, right? The recognize and replace. So like I said, a lot of this is going to mirror some of what was spoken about before. And with this one, we are taking those judgmental thoughts and statements and replacing them with non-judgmental thoughts and statements. Now, this is not going to come naturally to most people right away. We've been using these judgments oftentimes for much longer than we've been trying to not judge ourselves. So I often let my clients who are like, that feels impossible, know, okay, we don't have to replace. We just have to hold both at the same time. We just have to get used to the idea that non-judgmental thoughts can exist. So we're looking at a situation, right? Yeah, my immediate judgment might be there, but what are the facts of the event or situation? What can I observe with my senses? What is not vibes based, right? What is directly related to what you can physically engage with? Describe the consequences of the event, right? That event that's creating that judgment. What exactly has happened because of it? Not what you think is going to happen, not the vibes of what maybe happened. What has exactly happened there? And then finally, describing your own feelings and responses. So your emotions are not judgments. Your emotions are things like anger and sadness and frustration and happiness. Judgment is what you do afterwards, where you're like, I'm not allowed to feel this because of X, Y, and Z, or I should be feeling like this. If you're hearing the word should, it's probably a judgment. If you're not, and if it's more so like a simple phrase of like, I am feeling this, it's probably closer to an emotion. And when we do that, we can start to hold those thoughts, hold them at the same time. And we can start to recognize, hey, those judgment thoughts tend to be a lot more painful and less helpful than the neutral, non-judgmental thoughts and statements. Maybe we want to switch to those, right? Further on, we have things like awareness. So this is more so something you can do literally when you wrap up today. Choosing an everyday activity and engaging with it in slow motion in order to pay attention to your senses, your feelings, and thoughts as you go through a normal part of your day. For a lot of my clients, they're like, hey, you're asking me to do a whole bunch of new things that I've never done before. So I'm like, okay, we'll start with something you do every day, but we're just going to pay extra special attention to it, right? So the example from like a DBT skills workbook might be making tea or coffee, right? Preparing it for yourself to serve for a guest or maybe just for you, doing each movement very slowly and with awareness, right? You're not on the line at Starbucks. You don't have to like rush, right? You're just doing it for you and paying attention to what's going on, right? Your hand lifting the pot, the smells, the movements, each step, breathing deeply and gently while you do it. Again, this helps you to be more mindful, more in the present, less in that judgment. Move to the next part. Overall, when we're building self-compassion, that builds resilience to the difficulties like imposter phenomena, to the difficulties that we've spoken of earlier today. The more resilience we have, the better we can handle it, the less likely it's going to like knock us down, right? We'll have the ability to continue kind of moving forward while taking care of ourselves. And we also learn by doing. So take this opportunity to learn and practice a lot of what we've discussed. Whatever stuck out to you the most, I definitely recommend giving it a shot because it probably stuck out to you for a reason. So I'm kind of going to leave it at that. Ran through it a little quick, but I hope everyone had the chance to kind of go over it. These are some CAPS services. These are just things that we provide here. If you are in need of additional support, we have our individual, our group counseling. We have brief relationship counseling. That's if both people are at UCF. We also have online programs and just educational programming like today. This is where we're located. These are our hours. We have drop-in appointment services that kind of move from 8 to 4. Once you get closer to the end of the day, you'll likely meet with like a needs assessment counselor just to check in, get you connected the right way to whoever you need to be connected to. But generally, these are our hours. They don't really change much unless it's a football game day and everyone has to close. You can use that little QR code to find our website. And then these are some online resources. Together All is anonymous peer support. It's kind of like a moderated chat room related to mental health. Therapy Assistance Online is supportive online, like essentially modules that teach certain skills. So if you want to learn coping skills, Tao is a good place to start. And this is what our front of our building looks like and what you can do and how you can schedule, all that good stuff. Again, if you want an appointment, there's a little QR code. See you soon. We stopped doing intakes closer to the end of the semester, but y'all still got time. And all that means is we'll see you like briefly and then check in with you the next semester. Try to get you connected there. These are some of our supporting social media. Just move forward. And here is the thing I need you all to at least vaguely glance at. I would really appreciate it if you can complete the survey. Especially if you need any kind of like attendance certification or anything like that, make use of this. It lets me know how I did. It lets me know what to adjust and change, and we can kind of move forward from there. But please make use of this or use the bit.ly link to complete the survey. There's my name, there's the presentation title, and there's the date. So that's all I got for you. Thank you all so much.